That interpretation is so exact that the scrutiny of the present incarnation of an entity should be sufficient to inform us at the same time of its past and future. The present incarnation of the entity with that alternation of joys and annoyances was determined by the actions that it had fulfilled itself in the course of an anterior lives. Likewise, from now on, its deeds determine the conditions of its future reincarnation. The effect is separated from the cause by a time that may be long or short. If that interval is short, the effect is immediate, and the sinner sees the expiation accomplished before his eyes. If it is long, it is because the sinner is benefiting for a time from the happy effect of good deeds accomplished at some time in the past, and that it still lasts. But as soon as that metaphysic immunization is ended, the karmic law will have full play. In many cases, the fall incident to its is sudden, thus explaining the quick decadence of such and such a family, a dynasty, or a race. The free will of man is limited by the karmic effects of the anterior lives, man being the real artisan of his own destiny, affirm the Caodaists. The practice of good enables the entity to get rid progressively of its karma. To know himself, said Ngo Van Chu, the first Caodaist, lately disincarnated, the believer must wish himself unhappinesses. Caodaism also believes in the apparition of a new man, thus uniting either with Professor Pietro Ubaldi, who believes that man in the future will be a natural medium, a new type of sensitive being, or with our friends the Theosophists, who already perceive the new type of man in formation. Experience has shown that at each coming of the Messiah, whether he bears the name of LİCH, Buddha, or Christ, humanity is, as it were, awakened from its torpor. A stream of occult forces circulating everywhere helps him to understand mysteries heretofore incomprehensible. A sudden and marvelous development of such faculties as intuition, memory, intelligence, clairvoyance, empowers the believers to accede to the way that is now open. Touched by the universal fluid, which comes near the earth only after thousands of centuries, the faithful easily understands the divine teachings, and blazing the trail someday, he will succeed in being absorbed in God. Since the appearance of Caodaism, whose founder is the Supreme Being, phenomena of that kind were noticed somewhat everywhere in Cochin China. The most surprising is the integral vegetarianism practiced without trouble by the members of all sexes and ages. We have seen many children of 4 or 5 who could not bear a dish of fish or meat. We have seen many aged 13 or 14 years renounce a meat diet to eat vegetables and rice once a day. We have seen others who eat only fruits. These facts of a new order astonish the bonzes themselves, who confess that even among them very few practice a true vegetarianism. Then comes the unexpected expansion of certain faculties, such as memory, intelligence, intuition among persons who have received no instruction. Since its creation, the Revue Caodaiste has drawn our attention to some cases of reincarnation in Vietnam. We should be very happy to see our Caodaist brethren adopt for their inquiries and control the scientific precision necessary to the Occident, which wants proof more than witness of a moral nature. They would render us an immense service on that point. One case of minutely controlled reincarnation would subdue at a stroke the objections current and 100 times heard against reincarnation. The Revue Caodaiste has already undertaken such, and we congratulate them upon it. Each of us, says Caodaism, before being reincarnated, takes a little Chao Lu, soup of forgetting. If he takes much, when he has many sins and he has much to forget, he does not remember his previous life. If he takes a little, when he reaches one of his last reincarnations, and he needs no longer blush at grievous faults, he is able by introspection, intuition, and illumination to remember incidents of preceding incarnations. But it is the privilege of an elite of humble and silent meditative men and sages whom the world ignores. Our era of failure, chaos, hate, thirst for riches speaks readily of tax reform, treaty revision, frontier changes, revision of customs, duties, etc. But it forgets a reform which is little spoken of, but which is the key to reform of all reforms. Are we beginning to reform our conscience? It is because Caodaism understood this necessity and attempted that reform of conscience that so many black forces in Asia are raised against it. Powerful synthesis of the Asiatic religions, a link with the Christianity of Christ, a rallying of psychic and spiritualistic fact, basis of modern Occidental spiritualism, a cry of love toward the unknown, the infinite, the universal peace, and the fraternity of peoples. Greetings to thee, Cao Đài, greetings to you, Caodaists, distant brethren of Vietnam, which we now receive and bless in precept and example. Does at last old Europe dare overthrow those values that necessitate the advent of a new day? We believe so, and therefore we say thanks to our Caodaist brethren of Indochina. Caodaism and Victor Hugo. Religio, the Revista di Studi Religiosi, under the direction of Ernest Bunenti in Rome, has also consecrated an article to Caodaism. Mr. G. Mingiano writes, Victor Hugo and the Caodaists. One of my friends who is traveling in the Far East writes me from Saigon. Do you know that Victor Hugo has been deified? It is by a sect of Cochin China called Dai Dao Tem Ki Fo Dao, which has had the strange idea to attribute to the great French poet divine honors. What do you think about it? While in France a referendum was called to find the worthiest manner of celebrating the 50th anniversary of Victor Hugo, with ceremonies proceeding at the Pantheon, at the Sorbonne, at Guernesey, all kept in the strict banality of official honors. Here is a religious sect of Cochin China which confers on the poet divine honors and inscribes his name in the Legion of the Genii. So a man was called to honors of the altar, or almost, that in his famous will denied all value in religious content to constituted churches, and accepted only the prayer of the humble. Let us give to the gesture of the Caodaist its true proportion. The glorification of human genius understood as an expression of the divine light. The glorification of poetry understood as a human expression of the divine harmony. A form of glorification that is naturally framed in the fundamental conceptions of that new religious confession, which, in less than 10 years of life, has been able to gather nearly 1 million adherents. I knew in Paris toward the end of 1931 a student from Phnom Penh who was in attendance at the Sorbonne. He was a Caodaist. I learned from him that the Dai De Tem Ki Fo Do, which means precisely Caodaism, was founded in November 1925 and represents a synthesis of the 3 great Oriental religions, Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism, which, united with Christianity in the worship of Genii, represent the 5 great ways that Caodai, the Supreme Being, opened to humanity for their development and spiritual evolution. As we see, Islam does not find place among the ways that lead to the Most High. Christ, on the contrary, is considered by the Caodaists as an envoy of the Lord to a part of humanity to guide them along the way to perfection, a way adequate to their capacity for understanding spiritual values. The sense of profound veneration with which the young Indo-Chinese student pronounced the name of Christ, the respect with which he told me Christian rites of which he knew the occult signification, were for me, I confess, the highest, the most efficacious lesson of tolerance, at the same time an example of true fraternity in a superior being, who, in spite of the diversity of names with which men invoke him, changes not at all his face of shining love. What does it matter, really, whether a spirit be actually that of Fenelon or not? If he speaks nothing but good, and talks like Fenelon himself, he is a good spirit. The name by which he is made known is of minor importance, and often is only a means of fixing our ideas. Allan Kardec, cited by René Suger. Know that all have known his law, his end, his way, that stars and distances all hear him, that all in his conscience in creation, and that the ear can have his vision, for things and beings have their dialogue. What the Shadow's Mouth Said. Victor Hugo, Jersey, 1855. Victor Hugo was during his lifetime a practicing spiritualist. He communicated by means of a table and automatic writing. His desire while living was that he might appear to his friends after death. Therefore, the Hugo messages are more easily authenticated than those of a Fenelon, to cite the example of Allan Kardec, or of any others. Moreover, the solemnity of the message that I am going to reproduce here, the eminent quality of the interpeller, postulate in favor of authenticity. Here is then the spiritualistic message attributed to the spirit of Victor Hugo, or Nuet Tam Chon Non, in the séance of the 20th of April, 1930, at 1 o'clock in the morning. Ho Fap, I wish to be instructed regarding the origin of our Master and his power. It is not easy to know this mystery. The eternal searching of the question is not clear. It is possible there are, in my opinion, other universes than ours in the infinite. They would be more or less enormous, but life and their beings would have the same form. One of these would be more advanced. From the point of view of spirits in humanity, at one stage they should much resemble ours. With progress they could become apostles. In all the heavens beauty reigns. Its beings possess much of divinity. Peace and harmony rule these earths. Their creatures know not the word war. Nothing is relative, all is absolute. Great souls vie with each other in virtue. All production is science and wisdom. Soul power is master of human weakness. These latter worlds live without law. Union is made under faith divine. Death will be vanquished by uplifting conscience. There is no difference between living and dead. The love of all beings is published everywhere. Souls and men are all in holiness. There is here a certain world of ours where this kind of life is fruitful. You may one day appreciate its value. Then our world has passed to the higher degree. Ho Fap, when will the earth have these benefits? In order that you may be conscious of your merit, I will make use of a spirit expression. Through purgatories, beginning at the rank of the blessed, the land will be long becoming the land of the gods. If one would know the origin of our Master, he must be with him so as to penetrate it. No spirit has a clear opinion. Buddha himself only suppositions. Do not take my instructions as important. I only repeat what the spirits think. Let us suppose that the Creator in his beginnings in reality lived in one of these universes. His spirit also had to make a long ascent. From matter he became man, then a sage. He passed through the grades of the spirit class, and entered at last into the mystery of creation. Through his successive lives, he possesses a power that has made him master of wisdom and science. He surrounds himself with the best of the spirits, which make up his court of servants and friends. As soon as his heaven had power enough, he rode with his train through infinity. Reup. He has, then, a heaven of his own? Yes, each of us has a domain set apart, that he makes with his spiritual force. Souls and spirits that proceed from our karmic state, thus form our heaven and make our republic. Those who people it are scarcely faithful. Many among us come from our original sin, to the extent that one neglects the secrets of purification. He opens the heavens to these terrible demons, from which comes our Satan, the great devil. If we search for the truth and not fables, he surely comes from the cortege divine, which our Creator was unable to make perfectly holy. It is the rule that our nearest betray us, through jealousy, envy, or pure caprice. You have, Reup, a cramp in your hand. Let us put off our talk till tomorrow. I continue my discussion of Genesis, respecting that which will please you. Once on a time, in a shadowy place, still, stagnant, peaceful, unmoving, in a gas neither vapor nor liquid, slept somnolent germs and lethargic, enveloped at last in a frightful cold. No creature lived, no matter germinated. Reup. Is this the nature of the water spoken of in the Christian Genesis? Yes, it is this form of gas which is called hydrogen, more or less dense, which makes the purest part. Say that the Spirit of God swam above the waters. It is in this sense that the word must be understood. With its star made up of light, it animates by its heat inert matter. A layer of oxygen is produced, goes into action. The contact of gases makes an explosion. Divine fire is born and the holy water is formed. Under the effect of the two elements, all is transformed. From burned matter was formed gas. From burned gas were produced fluids. Pure fluids are vitality. Such vitality has a power of giving the spirits both death and life. What marvels are already shown to us? What mysteries are further reserved for us? All that comes from the hand of our Master, it is difficult for us to know. This divinely fed fire, expanded, casts its nebulae afar to the infinite. In all the universe this fire is sown. It is renewed as quickly as decomposed. These nebulae grow in the form of suns, creating worlds in all their details, which the consciousness of God and his light animate, and the weakest of beings have penetrated all. The Spirit divine is everywhere spread. All that have life proceed from this all. Of the fluids emanating from the light divine, the most impure are changed into stone, into earth, into vegetables, animals, and flesh. The most dense into air, and the pure to ether. Intellect is thus given to all creatures, according to their state, a dose more or less pure. Soul is thus created. As for the body, 'tis vitality that determines its lot. The rest you have understood. I stop here. Reup. Pardon, if all comes from our Master, all must be perfect. Why then do we observe imperfection in nature? What are these imperfections? May I give you some explanations? Reup. The wickedness and uselessness of beings, as well as men, animals, and vegetables. Their morals cannot be reasonably appreciated. Nothing is wicked or useless in nature. To be preserved there must be nourishment. The good Lord ardently loves his children. In his great love he finds them the means for their progress. He creates for them suffering. They must also have means of defense. Have you seen in this world a man truly pious? Though they be wicked to us, they are useful to them. How did our great sages become so? What do the pages of human history contain? A fierce struggle between the weak and the strong. The strongest are often the greatest. The opposition of the two gives the upward march of ideas and wise civil realizations. Our dear world is purely relative. Wicked and useless are only qualifications. On the globe each of us has a place. The worlds of other heavens are but classes. The universe is therefore a school for the spirits, who attend it for erudite study. Those who fail in their efforts must repeat the same classes and study their lessons again. All spirits hope to read the eternal book that holds the secrets that can make them immortal. The goal is achieving our rude career, which takes time, conditions, and manners. From the maternal world to divinity pure is eternity's road to be taken. The result is learning self-knowing, and then knowing through conscience the man that should be. The difference in characters is right. 'Tis an aid in making comparisons. Make room for great tolerance in your studies. Class the spirits according to their aptitude. Simply separate those who are human from those already a little divine. Give to the leaders the best example. Teach by all methods the unfaithful. Do not detest them for their infamy, and think only of the salvation of their souls. Love always in order to give to humanity. These two verities, love and eternity. Reup. The Father and the Master are different. Why does our Father take also the title of Master? He is at the same time Father and Master, for from him comes all of our being. He nourishes our bodies with that which is good, and makes up our spirit of what is divine. In him all is science and wisdom. Progress of soul is his unceasing work. Vile materials are jewels in his eyes. Vile spirits he makes into gods. His law is love, his power is justice. He knows but the virtue and none of the vice. Father, he gives to his children vitality. Master, he bestows on them his own divinity. What are the Caodaists? In Religio, la revista di studi religiosi, Mr. G. Mingiano writes, the Caodaists are divided into two categories. The first one comprises all the ecclesiasts, from the Pontiff Maximum to the last novice, all bound to a severe diet of chastity, poverty, and frugality. They live exclusively on vegetables and fruits, rigorously observed. The hierarchy is on an initiatic basis and comprises 7 grades of initiation. The highest, that of eldest brethren, has the exclusive privilege to communicate with the messengers of God, high spirits of light from whom they receive energy, teaching, and counsel. In the second category is all the mass of the faithful, which, besides Buddhist duties, must observe humility, honesty, respect of authority wherever found, and at last obedience to religious authorities. Worship consists only in common prayers, to which the faithful are convoked before an altar, on which is placed a great transparent sphere containing the sacred fire. On the sphere, a triangle, symbol of perfection and composition of divine. Energies in the triangle, the earnest eye of the eternal. In this religion, 2 aspects are, it seems to me, most original. The first is this. To become a Caodaist, one needs make no profession of faith. He need not be bound to any sacrament. Freedom of conscience is sovereign. The institution lives and prospers, not of the forced will of its adherents, but of their free consent, their spontaneous and voluntary adhesion. As a result, no anathema greets or follows him who decides to try another way. The prayer of all, on the contrary, renders his new effort easier, and that because the Caodaists not only recognize, but feel that the terrestrial life, the life in time and space, is a trial, a test, an experiment, that each one must realize in order to make a step forward on the way of Caodai, the Most High. And each one has the right to choose his way. The search for riches, the conquest and extension of material power are condemned by the Caodaists, because for them too the kingdom of God is not of this world, but it is at the same time a duty and a right to gain economic solidarity and to be able to give moral and material assistance. This is the source of the second original aspect of Caodaism. From the civil point of view, or rather for its social action, Caodaism has special institutions in crafts, teaching, outside relations, agriculture, etc., to intensify its work of social welfare, coordinated and efficacious. The Review Religio follows this article of Mr. G. Mingiano with these lines: Oriental wisdom that marvelously shields it. Pa Te Tien was a Chinese poet. Being governor of a district, he paid a visit to a sage, a great disciple of the Zen sect, who had chosen his dwelling in the branches of a tree. Pai, seeing him, cried, "What a perilous dwelling is this tree?" To which the sage replied, "Yours is much more perilous than mine." Then follows this dialogue. "I am governor of the district. I don't see what risk I am running." "Then you don't know yourself. What peril greater than the passions that burn you and your troubled spirits? What is the teaching of Buddhism? Don't do evil, practice good. But that a child of 3 years knows. Yes, a child of 3 years knows it, but an old man of 80 years, such as I, succeeds with difficulty in applying it." Han Shan, a poet, was a pure fool, who came to the monastery cooking to gather the leftovers of meals and feed on them. The monks laughed at him as a poor, innocent, and harmless fool. One day in his hermitage, Han Shan explained, "I think of all these past years during which I quietly came to cooking, where everybody seeing me said, 'Han Shan is a fool.' At present I think, am I foolish? I don't succeed in solving the problem, not knowing myself. And then, how can others understand me better than myself? Be man not fond of talk, in order to find God in the silence. Pray, the heart full of desire, but without uttering a word. God shall provide thee with thy needs and hear thy voice, and welcome thy offering. As well as in a desert, the water of which is so sweet to him who burns with thirst, divinity is shut to him who speaks, open to him who keeps silence." Message of wisdom. You kill one another, disputing the hills, the rivers, the lands, and the seas. You kill each other for possession of that which was created by the One in Three, the Three in One, though you are his children, and he is creator of all. Ambitious, selfish, wicked, you close your purses, and in them you shut up your hearts. How will you love one another? For love of the One in Three, the Three in One. To preach peace, there must be love for all men. To practice concord, pardon of all to all. What is the highest nobleness? What is the highest superiority? What is the highest origin? All men are sons of God. So God was called the Son of Man. You knock at the door of wisdom. A voice demands, "Who is there?" You answer, "It is I," and the door opens not. You knock at the door of wisdom. A voice demands, "Who is there?" And you answer again, "I." Do not be astonished if the door does not open. You knock at the door of wisdom. A voice demands, "Who is there?" You hesitate but answer, thou. At last the door opens, and you enter into wisdom. Caodaism at the International Congresses. We were charged by the Holy See of TIionhin, South Vietnam, to represent Caodaism at various international congresses. The First International Spiritualistic Congress of Barcelona, 1934. We read in the Revue Spirit d'Octobre 1934, in the series of resolutions adopted unanimously. 8th Caodaist Movement. On the motion of Mr. Gabriel Gobron, instructor in France of Caodaism, or Reformed Buddhism, or Vietnamese Spiritism, the 5th International Spiritualistic Congress held at Barcelona, 1st to 10th of September 1934. Very respectfully begs the French government to be willing, remembering the solemn promises made in March 1933 in the French Parliament by President Reup, then Minister for the Colonies, to establish on behalf of the Caodaists a statute as liberal as that enjoyed by the Vietnamese converted to Christianity or those remaining faithful to other Buddhist sects in the countries of Indochina Union. The Second World Congress of Religions, London, 1936. LİCH, September 20th, 1936, publishes this echo. At the last International Congress of Religions held in London, to which Mr. Gabriel Gobron, instructor of Caodaism in France, participated on invitation of the Holy See of TIionhin. Caodaism is recognized as the most tolerant religion in the world. Before a large attendance composed of representatives of all the great world religions and members of the international press, the French Caodaist delegate declared, "Caodaism is the very experience of the reconciliation of races and peoples for which you are gathered in this place. Caodaism, or Reformed Buddhism, is certainly a living experience of union and religious unity." Wild applause greeted the peroration. The Third International Spiritualistic Congress of Glasgow, 1937, L'âme Nouveau, November 14, 1937, published this echo. At the proposal of Mr. Gabriel Gobron, instructor in France of Caodaism or Vietnamese Spiritualism, the 6th International Spiritualistic Congress meeting in Glasgow, September 3, 1937, after the 5th Spiritualistic Congress of Barcelona, hopes that the Vietnamese spiritualists may enjoy in all the countries of the Indo-Chinese Union the same liberties of conscience and worship as Protestant and Catholic Vietnamese, be they subjects, protégés, Eurasians, or foreigners. The wish expressed by the International Spiritualistic Congress of Barcelona has already inaugurated a more liberal period for the Caodaists, or Vietnamese spiritualists. That wish presented and discussed in the philosophical section of the Congress was then adopted by acclamation at the popular meeting held at McLennan Galleries on the 9th of September, 1937. The Fourth World Congress of Beliefs in Paris, 1939. Let us extract this testimony from the Revue Spirit, Paris, September 8th. The World Congress of Faiths, which was formerly held in London, Oxford, Cambridge, took place this year in Paris. Our colleague Gabriel Gobron was delegated by the Caodaists, or Reformed Buddhists of Indochina, to attend it. The rebukes he invoked on the Congress of London may be related here and even enlarged. The organizers, almost all English, addressed themselves to the historic religions, which by their long history proved their fecundity. The very words of Mr. LİCH, September 10, 1939, and then exclude new religions, new doctrines, and still more syncretic religions such as Caodaism, a close fusion of Buddhist, Christian, Taoist, Confucianist, and Mohammedan beliefs, etc. It is useless to say that spiritualism, theosophy, anthroposophy, etc. are banished from that Congress which only seeks the collaboration of the respectable great religions, and never their close fusion or their synthesis. No comparison of superiority of religions was tolerated. The Catholic Church, though officially absent, was in fact well represented, Professor Maritain, Mr. Lacombe, etc., and it constantly received homage. 100 persons, many of them Anglo-Saxons, officers, administrators, professors, aristocrats, high bourgeoisie, attended the days, Catholic, Jewish, Buddhist, Protestant, Mohammedan, Hindu, even interrupting the discussions sometimes outside of the agenda. How to make the fraternal spirit reign over the world through the concourse of religions. The official support given to the Congress, Messieurs Champetier de Reup and Georges Mandel, its reception in the Sorbonne by the rector Reup, with the participation of French colonials, one general of the House of the Bey of Tunis, one Syrian administrator, etc., of a somewhat gaudy French committee, added to the prestige of these solemn sessions at the Richelieu Amphitheatre on the 2nd of July, 1939. The best of the Congress, in spite of narrow limitations fixed by itself in legitimate reserve, was its will to claim the rights of the individual, now so mocked in all the totalitarian regimes. A resolution recalling the dictators to greater humanity was moreover adopted at the end of the Congress, and the question of refugees seems bound to be inscribed in the order of the day at the next Congress, which will be held in Holland. A call was issued to all the official churches, visits to Versailles, the Paris museums, to intellectual centers, and the mosque where the very Parisian personality Kadour ben Gabriel courteously welcomed the delegates, etc., followed the daily sittings. They talked too much, certainly, but they also acted. Such a Congress is an act and bears a date. It should be proclaimed more important than the League of Nations, after one of those teas that gathered the members on certain days and revived the flame of the proselytes of the religious idea. La Vérité of Phnom Penh, seat of the foreign mission of Caodaism, expresses it in almost the same language, July 26, 1939. Caodaism at the Congress of Religions in Paris. Caodaism, or Reformed Buddhism, was represented this year at the Congress of Religions in Paris, July 3rd to 11th, by Mr. Gabriel Gobron, instructor in France of Caodaism, who again found the leading personalities he had known in London in 1936. Sir Francis Younghusband, President, and Mr. Arthur Jackman, Secretary. The French government had decided to give its support to the Congress of Religions, in the person of Mr. Georges Mandel, Minister of Colonies, Mr. Champetier de Reup, Minister of Pensions, the Rector of the University of Paris, Dr. Reup, who offered the broad Richelieu Amphitheatre in Sorbonne for the sessions of the Congress. A French committee, under the chairmanship of Professor Louis Massignon, and composed of various personalities, Madame de Corot-Remusy, Mr. Jean Herbet, Madame de Mergy, the Princess A. Murat, R. de Traz, Mr. O. Lacombe, Professor Daniel Reup, etc., led the debates which dwelt on the fundamental theme, how to develop the spirit of fraternal cooperation in the world by religion. Round this problem thus posed, we nevertheless notice Catholic, Protestant, Hindu, Mohammedan, Buddhist, Jewish days according to the body to which the main speaker belonged. So Tuesday, July 4th, was a Catholic day. The Catholic Church officially abstained from participating in the work of the Congress, but actually Professor Jacques Maritain, Mr. O. Lacombe, and other Catholics played a part of first importance in the Congress week. The Church was invisible, but present. True, the scope of the Congress was not so great, so universal as one might wish. This was due to certain limitations imposed upon the delegates. A. No religion must make proselytes by showing its superiority over other beliefs. B. It was not to be a matter of union, a fusion of religions, but only of collaboration with different religions while remaining separate. A religion of union, of synthesis, such as Caodaism, is thus not at ease in such a Congress. So our instructor in France could declare to Mr. Oliver Lacombe, Vice President of the French Committee, that he was the only heretic present. C. Access to Congress, theorically, was reserved to the great historic religions, having proved their fecundity by their long past. Speech of Mr. O. Lacombe, July 1, 1939. Sir Francis Younghusband decided, however, to welcome Mr. Gabriel Gobron, according him full liberty of speech and discussion, after his presentation of official papers from Caodaist authorities at the Secretariat in the Sorbonne. Mr. Georges Mandel, Minister for the Colonies, had assured the participation of elements of the French Empire in the work and debates. It was thus that General Hassan Husni Adelwahib of the House of the Bey of Tunis, an attaché of the High Commissioner for Syria, for instance, represented Islam. On the contrary, our instructor in France does not seem to have met representatives of the French elements of Asia, Hinduism and Buddhism being represented only by English elements. Bhikkhu Titila, Monastery of Rangoon, Professor Das-Gupta, Calcutta, etc. Each day, in Paris as in London, in 1936, was composed of an exposé in the morning, then a discussion in the afternoon, followed by visits to places of interest, Versailles, museums, etc., and to the intellectual circles of Paris, Institut de Civilisation Indienne, Mosquée, Association France, Grande-Bretagne, etc. Our instructor in France, having criticized the organization of the Congress of London, where isolated intellectuals, representing only themselves and sometimes their little vanities, be now held the floor for an hour or two, insisting that preference be granted in Paris to representatives of the communities, according to the very terms of the rules of the Congress at the Sorbonne. So dilettanti and amateurs found themselves set aside to the advantage of great names, like Professor Jacques Martiani, Catholic Institute of Paris, Professor Das-Gupta, Hinduism, Dr. C.A., University of Nankin, General Hassan Husni Adelwahib, House of the Bey, Viscount Samuel, ex-High Commissioner for Palestine, Bhikkhu Titila, Monastery of Rangoon, Professor Hoter, Protestant Faculty of Strasbourg, etc. Tuesday the 11th marked an end to the most fraternal and courteous of work and debates. The delegates separated with pain, with a certain wrenched after having passed motions, resolutions, examined projects, improvements, fixed the place of the next Congress in Holland, etc. Let us note, among numerous interesting things, a resolution asking dictators to rule their peoples with greater humanity. Congratulations to Chamberlain for his work of peace. Thanks to French authorities whose friendliness to all religions needs no further demonstration. The possibility was considered of Strasbourg, Jerusalem, Geneva, etc., welcoming the next Congress. An invitation to all churches to give the widest publicity to the work of the Congress, of which one order said that it might henceforth replace the League of Nations, torpedoed by politicians and their manipulators. The question of refugees was proposed for the following year. The French Committee decided to continue in Paris the work of rapprochement and mutual understanding between the great beliefs. Several interreligious associations were noted in the capital and offered themselves to delegates desirous of attending their meetings and joining their efforts. We think that the time is not far off when Caodaism will have to play an important role by its living example in these World Congress of Religions. 5. In 1948, as we have seen, Caodaism is a religion, a body of doctrine, a living tradition, a philosophy, in a word, a spirituality. Brother Gago was a good prophet. The international congresses will answer the call of higher entities, but not without difficulty. Mr. Henry Renaud presented the first edition of the present work to the delegates to the Third Congress of the Worldwide Spiritual Council, gathered at Lausanne, Switzerland, in August 1948. None of the delegates knew Caodaism. All were interested to learn that Caodaism has for its ideal the uniting of all religions and bringing of peace here below, which we also presume. Mr. Henry Renaud was charged by the Congress to enter into relations with the chiefs of Caodaism, asking them to join to the Worldwide Spiritual Council. The answer was favorable, and no doubt in 1949 in Italy, Caodaism will be represented to its credit.